Hi there, C.Note here. And today I've been holding in this topic for a while, and I just know that I need to start filming and see what comes out. And essentially, it's talking about finding purpose through atheism. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that on this channel, I know a lot of INTPs do end up going the atheism route, though that's not necessarily true for every INTP. Plenty of INTPs get involved in religion, and especially if you've had an experience growing up that was consistent and it made sense, and there's definitely this feeling of, you could talk to an INTP that's like, yeah, there's definitely a God and it makes sense. And then there are other INTPs you can talk to that are just like, no, there's no such thing as a God and that makes sense. And so I want to do the preamble here that this is not about the debate as to whether or not one of those things are true or not. I am of the personal belief that it's very okay to have whichever belief. However, one of the challenges with atheism is finding a sense of purpose through it. And that purpose not just being a defaulted purpose of railing against religion. And I talk about this because this has been my path through life. This has been my line of development, is having spent time being an atheist. Now I don't have a label anymore, so you could say agnostic if it makes you feel better. But um, I was definitely like hardcore atheist in my early 20s were the bulk of it, but I think most of my life I was very much questioning whether or not there was a God. I had no idea. I know when I was a kid I just kind of did it because my parents wanted to, and but I was always skeptical. Like, my situation was very inconsistent, right? So my parents were trying to figure out their place in Christianity, specifically, um, trying out Catholicism, Lutheran, all sorts of different stuff. And so it was inconsistent enough at a young age to not have something to really latch onto. And also, I'm a sexual one in the Enneagram, and I think I was just always naturally rebellious, always naturally asking questions. And so that element may be something for you that's an aspect of this, right? So it's about, I think, atheism and in turn religion. I think they're two sides of the same coin. I think they both serve the same purpose, which is providing some sort of belief in order to focus. Think of it this way. I've done videos on INTPs, and our thought process is kind of like code running in our brains. Like, our logic is built on a lot of if this then that statements, right? If this happens, then that happens. And beliefs are kind of like hitting the run button on code, or I don't know what it compile. Yeah, I haven't written code in a long time. Um, Hitting the compile button, and you're like, okay, I'm a person. I need to operate. This is what I believe, and this is how I operate in the world with these beliefs. And so beliefs don't necessarily need to be religious beliefs. They can just be like a belief on how to be social, a belief on, um, what's the right clothing to wear versus not. What are the best kind of movies versus the worst kinds of movies, or back in the day, it used to be like rap versus rock music, like a lot of that dichotomy. And it's very much like a belief-based kind of thinking. It's like, I've run this compile code on this thing, and this is what I believe is true. And that runs for a long time until you come across the life circumstance where you need to reevaluate that again and make a different decision. Because there were definitely points in my life where, like, I completely dislike country music. I don't even want to hear it. And now I don't listen to country music on purpose, but if it's on, I'm not offended by it, right? So, like, you grow, you change, you add new code, especially as you gain new experiences. You add and recompile that code all the time, and you're sort of reevaluating your beliefs. That's what we do as INTPs, is reevaluate our beliefs in order to continue to refine who we are and how we navigate the world and the principles that we operate on. So, for me, finding purpose through atheism is another version of that. It's that I've gone through my life experience, and my life experience has led me to the belief the idea, or the truth. You could say it's the truth. I'm not saying it's not true for you, but it's the idea that you've compiled this as your truth, as, there is no God, and this is how I operate in the world, right? Which is great. That's fine. You're allowed to have that. The challenge is now, how do I find purpose through that in something that is not easily defined as a path, right? So inherently, it's like you can take a theist and an atheist, right? A person who believes in God, a person who doesn't. And essentially, as we're developing as people, we're navigating the same terrain, right? We have to figure out how to navigate life. We have to figure out how to potentially get a partner and to have children and to get a job and to find a focus and career and develop skills and understand who we are and navigate our parents and any number of things, A, B, C, and D, you know. And mimetically, there's relatively the same sort of path. It just happens to be that a lot of religions have figured out to some degree their version of what the path looks like. And you can choose to follow that path, and things can go really well or really poorly. I don't know. Like, all the outcomes are different, right? And in atheism, it's like kind of saying, you know what, there's a path here, but I'm going to figure out the other side through the woods. I'm going to take the long, uncharted path. And I think there's plenty of stuff to pick up on when navigating through atheism, to learn lessons through other things like Buddhist principles and stuff like that. I feel like I accidentally stumbled upon Buddhism as something I adopted through my atheism. So it really wasn't. It wasn't intentionally. I felt I was being an atheist, and then I kind of latched onto some Buddhist principles, and that helped move me forward. And that might be the case for you, or it's just like the idea is that you're still kind of adjacent to something, right? So, in many cases, a lot of atheists are, and this is just one example, but in many cases, atheists are anti something, right? They're anti maybe a specific type of religion, something that they grew up in with, and essentially questioning everything, right? And hyper questioning everything, especially principles. But when you're questioning everything, you're still getting stuff from that, even if you're not in it, right? So for me, finding purpose is, whether that's through God or not, I think it's about building whatever walls you need. Some people ask questions to open doors, others to build walls. And I think when we're in this place of our development, we're asking questions to build walls around us. Because we're typically in a place in life where there is a focus needed, and we need to start to develop. Maybe you've been like running around town and you're causing problems, or you feel aimless, or you've just been in school, or you're having trouble with friends, or there's something where it just generally doesn't feel like there's a direction in your life. And usually asking questions and getting some sort of answer, whether that's a religious based answer or a self defined answer, still getting some sort of answers. And INTPs, we tend to lean towards self defined answers. We define our own truths for ourselves. And defining what those truths are allows us to create sort of an alleyway or some walls to then create some focus to start building skills, developing, and going forward, right? So I think ultimately that's one of the key areas and ways to start to think about this as finding focus for yourself and finding purpose through atheism. As hopefully the noises in the background aren't too loud, because that they have not been doing anything all day, and then I start talking and they start doing stuff. It always happens. But I'm in it, so we're gonna keep going. Um, when it comes to finding purpose through atheism, finding uh, it is about asking those questions and allowing yourself to not get too caught up in other people's versions of the walls they're putting up, right? The challenge is you're defining for yourself what's right and wrong, or how to navigate the world, or what your morals or principles are. The thing that I think, get caught up in these days is that one of the ways that we kept enemies out in the past was literally building walls, right? And we built those walls so that the people within the walls could now focus on developing the town, right? And you've probably played video games where you've had to do city building and stuff like that. Once you build a city, people feel safe. And some of the ways of asking those questions of ourselves are ways to find a way for us to feel safe, whatever version of that is for us. So we build those walls around us, and we can start to move towards finding some sort of focus. So any of the townspeople start to, maybe they develop a local pottery shop, or some sort of way that they can start to develop a skill and then maybe contribute to the community around it, and offer something. Now the challenge is today, conceptually, the walls are conceptual. They're not literal walls. It's even with nations, it's just like there are, tolls and guards and all of that stuff with various countries. But in terms of what we have access to these days with social media, it's like the enemies are in our pocket. You can go on Facebook and start an argument with somebody of the other side, and basically be in constant war with somebody. And now, war is meant to protect boundaries, or battles are meant to reinforce and protect the boundaries. And boundaries are important. I think even as an atheist, it's like there are times when I can't deal with, I can't be bothered by the decisions that people are making based on their religious belief versus what I believe, and versus what is true for me and what I understand of the world. So one of the major challenges here is curating our algorithms to make sure that we are not constantly being bombarded by other side stuff. That one of the shifts that I think can really help with finding this purpose through atheism is finding things that, I wouldn't say necessarily reinforce your principles, but once you start to manage the algorithm in a way that you're not necessarily always surrounded by, antagonism, you can actually then start to focus on, like, okay, what am I actually interested in? What can I learn? What can I do to focus and develop skills? If you're in college or a student, you could be, taking the time to actually develop and build out those long-term skill sets. So I find for me, that was kind of the case for me, is out of college. I had a lot of, luckily social media is not what it is today. It was a lot less of, something we can battle about. But I did spend a lot of time on social media arguing with people and trying to reinforce my arguments and have all of that, which I think it's kind of a natural part of it, right? It's like you need to keep reinforcing the walls. And for you to feel like you even need the walls, you need to look over the wall and be like, oh, the enemy's still there. Okay. but like every once in a while, right? So the challenge there too is making sure that you find some version of whatever safety is, whatever focus is, whatever. I think it's really focus. I feel like personally today, if attention is currency, then focus is gold. And if you can figure out how to find focus for yourself, then you're going to be able to soar and go in directions that nobody else is really willing to go in because they're too busy being distracted. And that includes INTPs who aren't willing to watch this video because it's 15 or 20 minutes. And taking 20 minutes out of your day to learn something that could change the rest of your life is like, well, some people have decided to invest their focus into this and get something from it, and others, they just don't. They don't value their time and attention as much. And if you value your time and attention, then you're going to make sure that your walls are fortified in a way that is in service of focus, right? And sometimes there's I know what really helped me was finding philosophies. I really dug into philosophy a lot when I was really, really steeped in atheism. It's a danger to get into the nihilism part, because when you're, I think the danger is atheism plus intense seriousness can become a real dangerous thing. It can be something where you sort of go into this meaninglessness spiral that nothing matters, nothing has any purpose, because if there's no God, then there's no direction, and there's no purpose, and there's no reason we're here. We're just meatbags doing stuff. Um, there's a certain joy in the fact that we're just meatbags doing stuff. Uh, but it can really, if you take yourself seriously and you take your personal meaning super seriously, then yes, you can get into a place of like, this is meaningless, this is worthless, like, why am I here and what am I doing here, right? And the challenges too is like, if I'm just going to be in these walls all the time, then that's really essentially what that's asking, is like, if I'm going to be in these walls all the time, then what what else is there, right? um, but it's one of those time periods in life that I think is about incremental, small, focused change. It's learning a little bit of a new skill every day. You know, if you're a video editor, like practicing a little bit every day, um, finding something to embed yourself in. Because again, like, community isn't necessarily always a religious thing, but community, in terms of contribution or being a part of a machine in some sort of way, something bigger than ourselves, is a very human desire. Whether you're an INTP or some other type, it just because you're an INTP doesn't mean you're doomed to be an individualist your entire life. Like, that's just not how that works. There's a very much a part of our unconscious selves that wants to be a part of something. And especially in this point in life, it's like, if you can find other people to talk about philosophy, not necessarily be anti-religion, because if you're anti, it's still got you, but there's also a path that way. But there's other aspects where you can talk to other people who are into philosophizing of life, or even trying to break down nihilism and see what that's all about, right? Um, but then also getting into hobbies and interests and expert building and becoming a part of a job you really enjoy and a team you really enjoy. It's kind of an ethos, and it sort of transfers us versus them from something as big and serious as like religion and meaning and purpose into something like, we're a software company and these are our competitors. Those guys suck, we're great, right? And there's like a lot less stakes with that. There's like physical financial stakes with that stuff, but it's not so much that it's not this life or death thing, right? So some of it is like potentially finding a way to transfer some of this uh, focus away from being, anti-religion and like arguing and fighting people, or trying to, frankly, like as an INTP, reinforce our ego around whether or not we're correct, versus like being open to the fact that we might be wrong, or um, just I shouldn't say it's about openness or closed mindedness, but so much as like just understanding what is happening when you're telling someone that they're wrong. It's reinforcing that you're right, and it's another way of making yourself feel seen and feel safe. And I know that's like kind of spiritual jargon, but it's in a sense it's another way to just kind of help you focus, and not abandon your own principles of being a jerk about it. I mean, I used to say things like, I can't take religious people seriously. I think they're all idiots and none of it makes sense. I used to be just that straight up, like, say stuff like that. And I can't really stop you from saying stuff like that. Like you're just gonna, that's part of all of that. I think it's all, I think it's strangely healthy. Uh, what I'm really advocating for in terms of finding purpose is not finding purpose through being an antagonist, but finding purpose through awe and wonder and curiosity, right? There's a forward path, as opposed to, playing tower defense games, in a sense. Not literally tower defense games, but when you're just like on your phone arguing with people on the internet, it's like you've stood your ground, you've stuck your belief here, and now you're just defending the tower, and you're not really going anywhere, right? when you're talking to people about philosophies, you're trying to maybe explore the world around you, maybe go to different parts of your city or go talk to new people or whatever. You're navigating with courage and strength in a direction that may put you a little bit at risk of changing your mind. And I think that's one of the challenges we have as INTPs is like kind of getting in that TI-SI loop and not wanting our mind to be changed, you know? And it doesn't mean necessarily changing your mind doesn't mean deconstructing who you are and being a completely different person. It just means that there may be questions you didn't know were questions, new bits of courage and things that you could discover about yourself that you didn't know existed. And so, when I see someone online that seems like they're an introverted thinking person or an INTP who are just going at people and attacking them, it's like that's their equivalent of get off my lawn. For some reason, they feel like the internet is their territory and they're in the tower and they're just like, no, stop attacking me, right? And to me, that reads as frail and fragile, and I'm scared, and I don't, I'm really set in my ways, and I don't want to evolve as a person. And I don't think being an atheist automatically means that you're unwilling to evolve as a person. I don't think that's a default state, right? Like you can be an atheist, and the thing is too, like I don't no longer identify as like an atheist or really agnostic. I don't have a label, but I don't necessarily believe in God either in terms of the external dude in the sky kind of thing. I sort of approach life with a sense of curiosity and wonder and awe. Like you can be an atheist and go to the meteor crater in Arizona and look at how massive it is and really experience how massive that is. And then you're just like, that came from space. And that made this huge hole. And there was probably this massive cloud of dust and this whole thing, fire, all this stuff. And it's just like your brain just goes into this like awe and wonder. And really, like, that's what religion tries to create is this consistent feeling of awe and wonder. That's why churches are so massive, high ceilings and color and all of this stuff. It's like reproducing a physical space where there's this sense of awe and wonder. And I think as an atheist, it's important to find that sense of awe and wonder for yourself and define it for yourself. I see atheism as not necessarily just being anti-religion, but finding awe and wonder on your own path. Not necessarily telling you what is awe and wonder. It's not you saying that like God and heaven and rituals and showing up to church and this version of family and community is how you will find awe. It's saying I'm going to wander through the desert or through the woods myself, and I'm going to find my version of awe. That's really it. And it's if you can self-focus in that sense in relation to also finding other people on a similar path or other people who are learning similar skills in a job, then you can navigate this territory together, wander upon a place that already has walls built, and you join their community as an editor, an engineer, or an artist, or a musician, or any number of things that an INTP can be as a career. And those are just like really shoddy basic examples. That gives you a place to feel home, to feel safe, to feel comfortable. And then from there, you can really allow yourself to develop as a person. So, I'm kind of going in circles talking about all of this, but I think it's a couple key components of finding purpose through atheism. It's awe and wonder. It's finding some version of community, finding some sort of skill to focus on, and not searching for enemies. And I guess to bring that last point home, there's this thing called the drama triangle and the empowerment dynamic. The drama triangle is this sort of codependent model of understanding that a lot of people can codependently put themselves in a place with people where they themselves are the hero, the villain, or the victim. The hero has power over the victim in like, you're not capable of doing this, I need to do it for you. and has power with the villain where they keep each other entwined. It's kind of a Batman and Joker situation. Without Batman, there is no Joker. Without Joker, there is no Batman, right? Their identity is sort of dependent on each other. And the villain is more obvious over the holding power over victim. And the villain, again, is not useful at all without a hero to throw challenges in front of, and feel a sense of purpose in relation to that. Heroes find purpose with saving victims, and that's an external version of finding purpose. Whereas a villain finds purpose by being able to find power over victims and to create problems for the heroes. The challenge is, again, you kind of keep each other in this dance. You kind of stay locked in this Mexican standoff of hero, villain, and victim. And so the empowerment dynamic is about moving into like a more detached territory. It's like your identity and your sense of self is not necessarily defined by this this need to have it reinforced by someone else. Like as an atheist, you do not need your position as an atheist reinforced by a religious person or by someone you need to convince or save in an atheistic way by convincing them by some sort of logic that they should be atheist, right? Like this is your path and other people have their path, and it's all part of it, right? So I'm like searching as I'm talking for one other thing. I know there's some other big element that I'm missing. So let me just kind of recap. It's focus, it's purpose in terms of awe and wonder, but also a skill to develop, perhaps a community to join or be a part of, whether it's a hobby or a job or something like that. As an INTP specifically, it's travel and getting yourself out of your shell. It's not seeking enemies or not trying to be a hero, and definitely stepping up to not be a victim of circumstance, because you can make yourself a victim of religious people as well. Whether or not that's actually true in terms of trauma, I think therapy is very helpful to make sure that you're not going down too many unhealthy rabbit holes. I think that's important to have someone to talk to communicate your emotional experience to, and what you're trying to figure out or what you're navigating, and whether or not you're making the right decisions. I think there's some humility in double checking our thinking for someone else to look at our code and say like, yeah, okay, that checks out, right? If you were writing some code, it's like you want someone to take a look at it so that when you do hit compile, it's good code, it works, it does its thing. You're obviously going to do a lot of trial and error on yourself, but you might need help sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, so uh, finding purpose through atheism is such a tough topic, and I was thinking about it for a long time, and I didn't land on things that are too neatly packed together. Because first of all, it's like I'm referencing a point in my time period in my life that was like maybe over 10 years ago, and it's I have this principle that I want to seek and support sovereignty. So it's not about trying to preach to you as an INTP to not be this, or to not go your own path, or not to make your mistakes and figure out your own thing. It's more so just to show you that like, yeah, I that's my path, and I don't know that many people talk about it as much. I mean, there's a lot of stuff around atheism and conversations and philosophies and stuff, but it's one thing about finding purpose as a part of that, again, especially because it's really easy to convince ourselves that nothing matters. It's really easy to convince ourselves that um, to get into is like a self-deprecating place as well. It's really easy to get into this place of like, and I've had regrets personally where it's like sometimes it seems like it would just be easier to be a religious person. And I think that's what I wanted to talk about. Sometimes it just feels like I wish I was programmed that way. Like it just seems like people have this track that they're on. They've took the beaten path. Everything just seems easier. And I think that's a result of our introverted sensing wanting some sort of template, and by inherently going this path, by choice or by not, you know, it's refusing a set path. So it can be confusing, it can be self-deprecating, it can be uh, a lot of overthinking, a lot of confusing thoughts. Um, a lot of the things that people could quote unquote dissociate around and just say like, oh, that's God. Like a 3-year-old was killed because it's part of God's purpose, and somebody could have like a bunch of explanations as to why that's the case, or they're in a better place and all of that stuff. Though a lot of people end up breaking out of religion because of those types of existential questions. You know, it's those things need to be experienced by someone to break out of that, by the way. So, going around and running around the internet and giving them the logic doesn't necessarily change anything. That's being a hero, actually, of trying to change someone's mind about religion. Um, that's an example of focus. It's so many things that are just kind of embedded in religious structures, a weekly place to go to have a sense of awe and community and wonder and purpose that's built in, you know, but those are things we need to some degree, some version of that, right? And if we don't have that, then we isolate, we get lonely, we get, especially as INTPs, we don't realize how lonely we are, or we might not admit that we can be super lonely in regards to our place in the universe or a place in a community, or having, frankly, maybe an easier time finding a partner, or having principles to pull from to help us navigate life, or to get a job, or nepotism that sometimes comes with religion that could be helpful. It just seems like sometimes religious people have an easier time, which is not true. There's a lot of religious people that have a really hard time. People who are forced into, a religious experience that, it didn't work out well for them, because they eventually started to move out of it, and in that deconstruction process ended up maybe making a lateral move and joined something else instead of actually moving forward. Like, there's a lot of pitfalls, there's a lot of challenges. So it's the same with atheism. There's a lot of pitfalls, there's a lot of challenges. But I know one of the things that really changed the game for me is that when I started to discover and explore more material science for myself, like, I've always loved this, like, space and the cosmos and planets and stuff like that. But I was really rampantly into it. I was listening to Star Talk by Neil deGrasse Tyson and a lot of those shows. And there was a Jesuit priest on there, and he just talked about how, as a Jesuit priest, like, yeah, of course we believe in science and we study science. We just see science as the exploration of God's creation. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. If I put myself in their perspective, like, I could vibe with that. It's not about saying that, this or that is a belief that this exists or doesn't exist. It's just like exploring the molecules that God created. I'm like, okay, I don't have any objections there. Sure, you're allowed to have that, and I'm allowed to have this. So a lot of it is kind of permission too, to just say, like, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for, this is what I care about, these are the principles I care about, which could include not believing in a God, an external God of some kind. And that's okay. And I think a lot of it is about permission and allowing yourself to keep going forward. You don't have to, the challenge is, like, you're going to come across religious people or religious situations, and it's you're just I can't necessarily tell you how to operate there. The challenge is, like, you're going to figure out how that feels in your body to maybe be offended by something, or feel like something's wrong or someone else is wrong or whatever. That's a big old personal challenge. I can't rewrite your code for you, nor do I think you want me to, you know. And I myself am not here interested in trying to convince you or save you or change your mind. And I would love it if you didn't do that in the comments either, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff. So hopefully you can respect each other. This is just something I wanted to try and see how it goes, because I think it was something worth talking about. And sharing some of my experience around it. If I can think of more things, or if you have questions, or something you're kind of stuck on, or like if you're an atheist, like where does your brain go? Like what do you start thinking about? Um, Outside of being anti-religion, like what do you think about in relation to yourself and your purpose and your meaning, right? Some of it is introverted intuition critical parent, which is the sixth function for INTPs. That is like, what is my meaning and purpose in life? What am I doing? Like, what is it? What does it all look like when my life is said and done? And what are all of the possibilities and probabilities of what I can do and what I'm capable of? That can be really tough questions for us to ask of ourselves and to figure out, especially if we're not getting into action and living life and traveling and trying to find our version of optimism and play and opportunities and all of that stuff. All right, I think I've done enough rambling. This is long enough as it is, but hopefully this has been some sort of use to you. I'm just experimenting with seeing if I've got more gas in the tank with topics to talk about relative to INTPs. So even if it's not related to this topic, if you have other questions, I can either divert you to other videos or something I can talk about and share. So that's it. My name is Christian Rivera. Happychemicals.org is the website. And also, if you go to cnotes.studio, I've got a link tree with like links to all my projects and my Substack and writing and all things that I'm figuring out what the hell I'm doing on this earth. you know? So I appreciate you. Catch you next time. See ya. Bye.